project, part of the South County SELPA. And in this workshop, our friends from the California Department of Education will be showing you how to review files and student policies. And anytime we do a workshop like this, if you've been to one of our other ones, you'll know that we like to focus on the big picture, the big reason why we're doing all of this work. And so I'd like to start with that. At our onboarding series, our onboarding workshop, we introduced the big picture, big why for technical assistance in general, which was how do we keep students at the center of our technical assistance work? And then at each workshop after that, we gave a workshop specific why. And for this one, which is about policies, practices, and procedures, that why is during this process, how can your LEA team pause and ask deeper questions? And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But before we jump into the content, I'm just going to take us through a warm-up and some introductory things. We're the Equity, Disproportionality, and Design Project, and our mission is to prevent disproportionality in schools. Our latest project is in collaboration with the California Department of Education to provide technical assistance for school districts and disproportionality. So there are 3 teams represented here. There's our team, led by Russell Coronado, our executive director. He's not able to be here today, but some of our other teammates are here. Adrian Bautista is here, and Dr. Aaron Mahoney and Olivia Rivera. Our other teammate, Marcus Jackson, is also an important part of our team, but is not here today. The other folks that we have with us, collaborators, is we have 2 of the units from the California Department of Education's Focus Monitoring Technical Assistance teams, Unit 2, and then Unit 3. So we've got 3 teams here, all in collaboration, putting together some creative content for you so that you can learn how to use technical assistance, stay focused on the big picture, but also work through your systemic review for disproportionality. One of the things that is challenging about a technical assistance series like this is we know that relationships and positive feelings on relationships help us learn, but we're not in the same room together. And so we've got these 2 glass screens separating us. And so we try to make some effort at growing our relationship together so that we can learn together. And one of the ways that we do that is we just ask some warm-up questions. You don't have to answer these, but I hope that if we've done our job correctly, that we'll have at least one of these questions that will be interesting and fun enough for you to answer. So there are 2 of them. I'm going to display them one by one. I'm going to read them out. And then if you feel compelled to do so, put your answer in the chat. Okay. Thumbs up if you are ready for the first warm-up question. Great. Okay, here it is. What's your favorite snack food? What is your favorite snack food? Put your answer in the chat. Oh, beef jerky. So we did this yesterday. I don't think anybody said beef jerky yesterday. Interesting. Okay. Sushi, love it. Cheez-Its. Cheez-Its is like an all-time classic. We have that around the office around here. Popcorn. Okay, keep those coming. Keep the snacks coming. I'm going to reveal the second question. Here we go. What's an item on your bucket list? Put your answer in the chat. Skydiving. Diana says driving Route 66 from California to Chicago. It's an awesome one. Art classes. Oh, a watch person. GMT Master 2. You have excellent taste. I have to scroll up to see who said that. Exploring Spain, an Adidas tracksuit. Oh my God, I love that so much. Aaron, I don't know if this matters for you, but are you talking about the red one or the black one? You could just reflect on that. Travel more, Benay says. All right. Keep those coming. We don't mind if you chat is a really great way to engage the each other and us. So keep those coming. It's fine. I'm going to move on because we have a ton of stuff to go through, but feel free to keep those coming. Okay. Community agreement. So these are really straightforward. I don't think any of these are too surprising, but I'll go through them really quickly. The first one is take care of your personal needs. We're only going to be together for at most an hour and a half this morning, so we have a ton of stuff to review with you. We won't be taking any breaks, but we also know your day is very busy. Please take care of your needs. If you have to get up and stretch, top off your coffee, turn your video off for a little bit, we understand. Just go ahead and do it. Whatever is going to make you feel like you can remain engaged with us for our time together. The second is assume the best intentions of other participants. We're talking about a lot of sensitive stuff when it comes to technical assistance. Sometimes even the topic of technical assistance itself is sensitive. And so we're all working through that together. And it helps if we give each other the benefit of the doubt, assume good intentions from everybody. The third is ask what you need to know to understand and contribute. Our goal, CDE's goal, and our goal is to make sure that you've got everything that you need in the way of skills and coaching to work through your disproportionality process, both for compliance reasons, but more importantly, to change your systems so that you create the experience for your students that you want. And in order to do that, we need to know what you need from us. So if there are things that you don't understand and things that you need to be clarified, please ask. Mostly in the chat, because we have a lot of stuff to go through, but there might be some opportunities to go off mute also. 4 of 5 is we've found that the best experience in a workshop like this is when we can see each other, but we also know that that is not for everybody all the time. So we encourage you to leave your camera on, but if you need to turn it off, we also understand that too. And then finally, we encourage participation mainly through the chat for a format like this, but there might be some prompts to go off mute and share. And when there's that opportunity, then we encourage that as well. All right, we're really excited to be doing this work with the California Department of Education. And one of the most rewarding things that we've done together so far is talk about and agree on what our big picture values are. You'll see those on the right side of this slide. And it's very similar to the essential question. How do we keep students at the center of our technical assistance work? And so we're constantly pushing and challenging each other and asking questions about how we can take procedures like technical assistance and maintain a connection to what it is that we're trying to do for kids. For policies and procedures in particular, the question is, how do I use this process to learn more about students? So these are shared values that we have. They are probably shared values with you. There is certainly some overlap there, but there might be some more specific things for you because of what you bring to the table personally, or what your organization is focusing on. And so we encourage you to reflect on that and surface that as much as you can during this process. We've been told that it helps to know where you are in the process because it's long and complicated. And so we want to remind you that so far we've been through onboarding. Most of you have done the data drill down workshop with us. Most of you also have done the parent input workshop with us and are working on assignments for that. We are here at policies and procedures. And then there are 2 more in the gather and inquire phase of our work together. That is going to be educational benefit and infrastructure assessment. So we're at policies, practices, and procedures, and then you got 2 more after this for gather and inquire. Okay, finally, before I turn it over to Libby to deliver the content about policy review, Olivia and I are going to have a conversation that is meant to demonstrate and model what it's like to lead with our curiosity during this process and push each other to dig deeper. So that we go beyond the forms of what we are doing and go into the reality of our work and what it is that we want to try to get done for kids. And so as Olivia and I have this conversation, I want you to watch for 2 things. The first is how we create space that feels safe so that we can talk about these things and how we ask each other challenging questions. Olivia, are you ready for our conversation?
Yes, Ryan.
Okay. I'm going to start just by giving context for the group here. You used to be a special education director who used to lead file reviews, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And during that peer review, how would you, during that process, how would you characterize what that experience was like leading it?
I think similar to what we've heard, right, during coaching sessions or in these trainings, it can be overwhelming, especially as a brand new SPED director. I'd never done one before. And so I was learning how to do it and teaching my team at the same time.
Oh yeah, no, I know the minute you said that, it made me remember a feeling that I had, which was it just like pressure to get it done because there's a timeline. And then there's also that feeling of I don't fully understand what it is that I'm supposed to be doing. So those, like any one of those feelings on their own might be manageable, but there's an extra level of stress when it's like you got both of those at the same time. Is that the
Yeah.
way it felt for you, or was that just me?
No, it was absolutely that way.
All right. What would you say is what was something that you remember from this process that you thought, I'm really glad that we did that?
Um, After putting my team together, I was in a East County of San Diego in a small rural school district. And so I had a limited amount of special education staff. I tried to diversify my team members. Like I had a psychologist, a special ed teacher, a speech pathologist, some a gen ed teacher, a gen ed administrator. I was trying to get everybody who would normally sit at the IEP table to make decisions about kids so that we'd have all the perspectives. So that was important. And in the end, what people said to me was, wow, I'm really glad I went through this process because it really enlightened them, about there's so many boxes to check. There's so many sentences that are written in IEP documents. It can become, I don't want to say this in a bad way, but it can be mundane or second nature to us. But the reality is, every sentence we write, every box we check is impacting the life of a child. And we have to really stop and think about that.
I think that leads me to my last question, which is I remember looking at some of these forms and I understood what they meant. And I knew that, I could sort of review and then check the box if we had met that requirement. But what I also remember was there were a few of them that it made me feel like I don't understand what this has to do with kids. And now with a lot of experience, I understand that connection is there. But if I came to you as like a newer file reviewer and I just said, help me make this connection, what's something I can do to make sure that like this is really about kids and not just about filling out forms? What would be your advice for me?
Ryan, I've told you a story about when I was a SPED coordinator in a big school district down here in South County, San Diego. We had a parent show up at a meeting with a big binder, right, with all her assessment reports and IEP documents, totally repaired. It was a contentious IEP meeting, so there was a lot of people at the table. But that parent really reminded me and the team that the entire meeting was going to be about her child. She shared a picture, she shared the binder with a picture of her son and said, don't forget, like, who we're talking about today is my son, because like I said, sometimes we get so amped up about, we have another meeting, we have another IP, let's get it done. But the reality is every decision we make, everything we write about is impacting a child's life and a family, not just a child's.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Okay, I'm going to close the conversation there. And as we move on to the content of this workshop, reflect on what that conversation felt like to you, and also reflect on how will you create an atmosphere that feels like that with the people that you were leading, that is both open to very difficult questions, but also honest about what gets in the way, and also creative in the way that you address them. Because I think that's what it takes, is some creativity to make the connection between the boxes that we check in these forms, and the way that translates to the experience that we're creating for students. So some food for thought there. Okay, enough for me. I am going to give the floor to Libby from the California Department of Education, who's going to be delivering the content on policies and procedures. I'm going to stop sharing, Libby, and it's all yours.
Great, thanks, Ryan. Let me share my screen. All right, so my name's Livy Durkee. I'm part of Focus Monitoring and Technical Assistance Unit 3. I'm going to take you through policy practices and procedures review along with my colleagues Nicole Garibaldi and Stephen Rogers. The policy practices and procedures review has been renamed. It used to be called the Disproportionality Review. We renamed it to align with the federal regulation wording. So today we're going to look at the timeline. I'll take you through that and the disproportionality regulations. Stephen Rogers is going to take you through data, and then we'll look at the special education compliance monitoring system. I'll take you through policy and procedures, and then Nicole will take you through student level corrective actions and prompt 2 review. So as I mentioned, I'm part of Focus Monitoring and Technical Assistance Unit 3. We call this FUMTA. I'm under James Johnson. You can see our unit number there. I am part of one of 2 units in the Special Education Division that focuses on monitoring for targeted level tier 2 and 3. The other unit is Donna DeMartini's unit, FUMTA 2, and you can also see her unit number listed there. All right, so on to the policy, practices, and procedures review timeline. In March, you should have received your annual determination letter and data. Right now in April, you're attending this training and you'll receive your PIN notification by the end of the week. And you're gonna work on completing this review through May and into June. It's due June 30th. In June 30th, we will have a review ourselves, the consultants, and we'll make sure to have findings by August and corrective actions will be issued. Now, if you do have corrective actions, they'll be due in October. Student level will be 45 days, policy procedure 60 days from that date of notification. Now, if you do have non-compliance and corrective actions, you will automatically be participating in the prompt 2 review, which will be in December. All right, so I'm going to talk about how it all connects. If you're doing your policy procedure review and you find that you do not have policy and procedures in place regarding parent participation, make sure to note that. It's a good data point. You can also use that in conjunction with your student file review. Perhaps during your student file review, 9 out of 10 files had no general education teacher participation, and maybe 5 out of 10 files did not have notice for a parent to attend, and there was no parent concerns or other information about parent input. It's another great data point. I apologize, you can hear my cat. She's trying to get into the room right now. So all of this data can be used and compiled into your compliance and improvement monitoring activities. So the policy procedure review has corrective actions issued, and those will ask you to have those policies in place or edit those policies to be compliant, and you'll have board approval. And then you might provide training. So this is something you can instill in your SIM activities as well. All right, so on to some of the regulations. So it's part of our quality assurance process. It's designed to meet requirements of general supervision, Title 34 Code of Federal Regulations 300-600. It's also part of IDA 616. It requires states to identify LEAs with disproportionate representation of racial ethnic groups in special education. And importantly, it's a precursor to significant disproportionality. So if you are disproportionate for the same subcategories for 3 years in a row, you will end up in significant disproportionality and face fiscal impact. So what is disproportionality? It's the overrepresentation of a specific racial or ethnic group, and it's in 4 areas. So overall identification, we call this indicator 9. Education and specific disability category, we call that indicator 10. More restrictive education environments, we call this placement, and disciplinary action, we call this discipline. First, we'll take a look at the state performance plan indicator 9. It's disproportionality overall, and it's by 7 racial and ethnic groups. So American Indian, Asian, African American, Hispanic, multiple ethnicities, Pacific Islander, and white. We'll also look at indicator 10. This is disproportionality by disability. It's by the same 7 racial and ethnic groups. And we'll look at autism, emotional disturbance, intellectual disabilities, other health impairments, specific learning disability, and speech or language impairment. To placement, so it's the same 7 racial and ethnic groups. We're looking at disabilities in those 7 racial and ethnic groups, less than 40% in general education, and then also separate schools and residential facilities. So now I will take it over to Stephen, and he'll take you through how disproportionality is calculated. Stephen?
Thanks, Libby. Good morning, everyone. So it's my job to walk you through some math early in the morning. So let's jump right in and get to it. why are LEAs disproportionate and how is disproportionality calculated? So the Data Evaluation Analysis Unit, that's the unit I work for, extracts data from the California Longitudinal Pupil Achievement Data System, in case you guys ever cared about what CalPADS actually means. That is CalPADS' entire name. We take it and we calculate something called the risk ratio, which I'll be walking you through in a couple of minutes, or a couple of seconds, really. Any LEA that has a combination of ethnicity in one of the groups that Libby just went over that exceeds a threshold of 3.0 is considered disproportionate. All right, so let's talk about the risk ratio and how we calculate it. In this particular example, we're looking at African-American students with specific learning disabilities. So the first step is to take the African-American risk. So we divide the students with disabilities by the total enrollment for that LEA. So 27 by 325, which gives us 8.308. And then we look at what's called the comparison group, which is all the students with SLD who are not African-American. And then we do a risk for them called the other risk. And because those numbers in blue are greater than 10 and 20, which is the federal requirement, the federal minimum requirements, we can go ahead and continue using the LEA data. So the other risk for the comparison group is 93 divided by 5,023, or 1.85. We use a risk ratio, which means we compare those two calculated numbers. 8.3 divided by 1.8 gives us 4.487, which exceeds the maximum ratio of 3.0. So the LEA is disproportionate for African-American students with SLD. All right, so let's look at the alternate risk ratio, what happens when things are too small. So the first step is the same, in this case, white students with emotional disturbance. We want to calculate the risk for those students, which is 21 divided by 1434, gives us 1.464. But when we look at the comparison group at the LEA level, the non-white students with disabilities is less than 10. So that is too small according to federal guidance. So then we must move to the comparison group at the state level. So then we look at the state students with ED, taking out the white students, and the state total enrollment, taking out the white students, which gives us 15,000 in sum divided by 4.7 million in sum, gives us 0.331. And then the last step is the same. We compare those two risks to generate a risk ratio. 1.46 divided by 0.33 gives us 4.42, which, as we know, exceeds the ratio threshold of 3.0. So this LEA is disproportionate for white students with emotional disturbance. Let's stop and take a quick question, Libby, if that's all right. Elizabeth Pena, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Does the white category include white Hispanic, or is it white only? Now, I know that Libby's going to go over this a little bit more at the end, but I will just say that white category includes whites only. Hispanics, anyone who's Hispanic goes into the Hispanic category. Libby will do a great job of diving in deeper in terms of how that all breaks out. So hopefully that answers your question. If not, Libby will do a fabulous job, I'm sure. All right, so what is it that you guys actually see? Because you guys don't get to see all the behind the scenes math. I'm sure you would love to, but it would probably bore you all to tears. So this is the data sheet example for indicators 9 and 10, the overall disproportionality and disproportionality by disability. First part is overall disproportionality indicator 9. You will see the 7 race and ethnicity categories that Libby mentioned earlier. And you will, that's right. And then we go down to the indicator 10 by disability sets. You only see 2 of the 6 here, but trust me, we calculate them for all 6 of them. And you'll see the same. Oh, sorry, I falling behind. So what you're looking for here is the OVR, which indicates that the risk ratio for that cell or combination of race, ethnicity, and disability or overall is greater than 3.0. So you can see here, Native American students with overall have a 3.60, which means that they are disproportionate. Also in the bottom right, white students with emotional disturbance has a risk ratio of 5.29. So they are flagged as OVR and they are disproportionate for that. All right, how about an LRE placement display? So it should look incredibly familiar. So we have the 7 race and ethnicity categories as columns, and then we have the 2 different categories in regular class, less than 40%, and separate schools. And once again, we're looking for that OVR that indicates that the LEA is disproportionate. In this case, white students in separate schools, the risk ratio is 5.43, which is over the threshold of 3.0. All right, I'm all done. Back to you.
Thanks, Stephen. So before we move on from data, there is a couple things we should consider on how our data is collected by the federal government. So in 2 areas, Hispanic and multi-ethnic, there's a couple little things we should be aware of. So if a student is biracial and identifies as both African-American and Hispanic, if this parent picks Hispanic, it will override and count that student as Hispanic. So if it hit yes on Hispanic, counts as only Hispanic, there won't be any count towards African-American, even if maybe they identify more as African-American. So this is definitely a parent engagement piece at intake. As for multi-ethnic, it's very similar. It'll include students who are multi-ethnic, but it will also include students where the parent left it blank. So this is a left blank category is collected into that data set. So another piece to consider looking at your parent engagement at intake. All right, and also knowing about the why. So before we move completely away from data, like Stephen mentioned, the risk ratio threshold of 3.0 means that race and ethnicity group is 3 times as likely to be identified for that category as other groups. So if you have a risk ratio of 5.4, you're 5.4 times as likely. So it's something to consider when you're thinking about your data. But besides that, if you're over-identifying and perhaps incorrectly, not always, but if so, there's limited access to rigorous curricula for those students and academically able peers. There's also stigmatization with this, and it can cause racial and social separation. So all things to consider when you're thinking about why we're doing this. So what do you need to do? You'll want to review your annual determination letter and data sheets. Stephen showed you those data sheets, and then I'm going to go through the rest of this with you, and so is Nicole. So we're going to verify your student list, use your PIN email to log into SECMIS, Special Education Compliance Monitoring System. I might say that often. So, and then you'll complete the steps in SECMIS. So first off, the student list, your CD consultant will send or has already sent you your student list. It could be up to 10 students per indicator. So if you are out on all 4 indicators, you might review 40 students. If you're out on 1 indicator, it would be up to 10 students. You'll verify that those students are active. If any have exited, please provide that information and documentation to your assigned CDE consultant within 14 calendar days. Your CD consultant will approve a student list and authorize you to begin your review. In order to begin your review, you'll need your PIN notification, which will go out this week. You'll receive that email from SECMIS. It has the link to log in and your PIN. This email is sent to your special education director and CC superintendent, SELPA director, and your assigned CD consultant. So if you haven't received this by Friday close of business, check your spam. You can also reach out to any of those that might have been CC'd and see if you can get a copy of it. As for SELPA, you receive your own email in a separate email. It has your login link and PIN. It provides overview feature only, and you can access reports and see what's been completed, but you can't make any changes. So to initiate your disproportionality review, you'll use your login link and your PIN, and it'll take you to this screen. The fiscal year should already be pre-done, and it says 18-19, it should say 21-22. You'll want to make sure to select that, make sure it says 21-22, enter your SELPA, your LEA, and then your PIN. You'll hit log on. Once past that screen, you'll get to this screen. It has your contact information where you can update your information. Now, since this is going through June 30th, if you know anyone who is retiring or they're leaving your district, you can go ahead and make that update. This is the email that SECMIS uses to notify you of information, so it's important that it remains updated. So click the update link and you can make any changes in there. Once you've taken a look at that, you'll want to begin your review by clicking this link here to begin or continue your LEA's disproportionality review by clicking here. That hyperlink will take you to the main page, and on the main page, you'll see this. It's a reviewable indicator box. It should be pre-selected and grayed out. Double check this against your data sheets. If you see any discrepancies, let your CDE consultant know immediately, as these are the ones that drive the questions in the protocols. So we're also going to get into the policy and procedure review. As I mentioned before, this is a great area for you to look at data points, as policy and procedures have free, appropriate public education and least restrictive environment implications. So look at these data points and see if it's something that you can collect, if there's anything that you might be able to use in terms of what you're seeing for this review. To review your policy and procedures, on your main page, right below the reviewable indicator box, it has the protocol areas. So next to compliance test for policy and procedures, you'll want to click the hyperlink that says compliance review. That will take you to another screen. I'll show you that in a minute, but first, what you'll want to do to complete the policy and procedure review is make sure you've marked everything compliant or non-compliant, and then put information in the item notes box. So if it's compliant, where we can find that information. If it's non-compliant, why it's non-compliant. Let's see. So here I will give you the examples. You can see along the left-hand side, all the different indicators. We have a bunch combined and then we'll break them up. And that's kind of why we have the white and blue. It has nothing to do with what you're reviewing or what you're not reviewing. It's just distinguishing the different sections. So we have all, and then you can see the discipline one right beneath it. We'll have an indicator 9 section and an indicator 10 section and so forth. Here we have in the item notes section, the administrative regulation 4112.23, and you'll note that it's marked compliant. So this LEA believes that they are compliant, and that administrative regulation shows that they are. You'll note here it says not reviewed. It's grayed out. You won't be able to change it. I don't know if you noticed, but in previous examples, I believe it shows them out as just placement. So this LEA is just a placement LEA. They are not going to be completing a discipline section, and the system already has graded out for them. So they won't have to make any changes to that. Once you've completed all of these items, you'll want to go back to the main page. You'll hit save. Make sure you see red lettering that says everything was saved correctly. SECMIS talks to you this way, so it could also say, hey, you're missing a piece, and it will highlight which box is missing. So just be aware of the red lettering and read it carefully to see if it's good or not good. When you go back to the main page, use that hyperlink in the upper right corner. It says LEA review menu. Don't hit the back button. A lot of times SECMIS doesn't like that and will stall out. So on the main page, you'll want to upload your policy and procedure documents. It's below the protocol section. You can hit upload, and you can upload fairly large files. Immediately, your CDE consultant can see that you've uploaded it, and you'll get red text that says that you've uploaded it. However, your CDE consultant may not be able to access that document immediately. So it's something to keep in mind. With that, we're all done with the policy procedure section, and I will take it over to Nicole Garibaldi. Nicole?
Good morning. My name is Nicole Garibaldi. I'm over Region 8, and we are going to go over the student file review and prong 2 with me. I just saw a question in the chat, and it was, what examples of files would we upload? And that'll be later in my presentation, so we'll get to that answer in a bit. So we will go ahead and start with entering the student names. Your consultant will have given you the names that you're going to enter into here, 10 students per indicator, first name, last name, and their SSID number. You'll add each student in individually. Once all of your students have been added in, you'll get to this next page where you can see all of the students. You can double check their spelling of their names, their SSID numbers, and if you have any errors or anything like that, or you need to swap out a student that you and your consultant have agreed upon swapping out, you can delete or edit on this page. After you've gotten all your students settled, you'll go to this next screen and you'll click next to the student level compliance tests, the compliance review, and that'll take you into the review process. Now, just like with the policies and procedures at the top right there, you'll have to make sure, just double check against your data sheets that right there where you see placement, that the indicator that was selected is the correct indicator. Right. The next slide. So here are all the students that were entered for this particular example. There's 7 students. You'll see next to them it says not saved because you haven't started your review process yet. You'll select one of those students to go ahead and begin. Once you select your student, there you go. The LEA will review each item number against the student's IEP and supporting documents. The LEA will use the note box, which I'll show you in the next couple of slides, to notate where you can find the evidence for each one of the findings, whether it be compliant, non-compliant, or non-applicable. And you'll repeat that process for each student. So after you submit it, you'll go back to that other slide and select the next student that was not saved. Okay. So this is an example of a review for a Tinkerbell. You see we selected that student at the top where it says not saved. You'll put in the IEP type that you're looking at. You'll put in the IEP date right there in that box. And here's 2 examples of some findings. So you'll see if you can read the tiny little numbers. 2-2-2.5 are testing and assessment materials and procedures selected and administered so as to not be racially or culturally discriminatory. And the example response is not applicable because this particular IEP that we are reviewing is an annual IEP. And so the only way that would be applicable is if we were doing a triennial. Totally, that makes sense. The next one you can see 3-3-6.1. I won't read the question again. So you can see the question, it was marked compliant. And then in the notes, in the item notes, they notated where that documentation can be found to support the compliant finding. All right. So to answer the question that was in the chat, here are some examples of review documents. So the assessment plan, assessment report, signature pages, excusal form, note pages, progress reports, historical IEPs, behavior support plan, and the manifestation determination. Now, these are just examples. There could be additional documents that you can use as well. Just make sure they are the most recent and operable IEP documentation. So make sure we're using the ones that are relevant for that date that you're doing the review. Okay. So you can see that this, you may come across areas that are grayed out in SECMAS, and that just means that you won't be reviewing this part. You won't be able to manipulate anything in there anyway. It's just part of another indicator that you weren't a part of, so you won't be able to do that part of the review. So at the end of your review, after you've reviewed all the students and saved the findings, you put all your notes in, you'll get to this LEA evidence box. And you'll see in the example, there's a username and password, and most districts will assign one specific to their consultant to be able to look at the electronic files for the students that are going to be reviewed in this particular review. And as you can see on there, it says beta.sace.org. That is where the consultant will be able to log in to do their portion of the review. Also, sometimes there's a little delay on when the district staff has to get all the files uploaded and ready for the consultant. You can insert a date there when those files will be ready for the consultant to conduct the review. Make sure when you click save, you look at, just like Libby said earlier, SECMAS will give red messages or red text messages, whether it's successful or not successful, if there's any errors, and it'll let you know what you need to fix or if it all went through. Okay, here's a short checklist. When you've completed your review, just to make sure, As we saw earlier, there's a contact information area with the special ed director, special ed director, SEPA director, and the superintendent. Make sure those are spelled correctly. You don't want the information to go into la la land, because then you might miss information that you need to get. Because as you guys know, there are due dates and deadlines for all of the information that you'll be submitting. Appropriate indicators are selected. I believe it is your consultant that selects the indicator. So just in case I have done it wrong, you can look against your data sheet to make sure that the indicator is appropriately selected. Upload your policy and procedure documents. Provide access to the electronic system. As we saw, you'll give username and password to whichever electronic system you have to your consultant in that evidence box, and upload the documents into your electronic system and make sure all of the areas in SECMAS are complete. After that, you'll, there it goes. You'll submit your initial review, and this will kick it into a queue for your consultant to know that you have submitted your review. All right. So after the district is done with their portion of the review, it's in your consultant's queue. The consultant then conducts a review as well. They'll go through each item number with your documentation that's within the notes section. And when you've submitted it, if you have submitted it and everything was great with flying colors, it is possible that your consultant can find some non-compliant items or non-applicable items. It's also possible that you may have marked yourself non-compliant and your consultant does find it compliant. That does happen sometimes. Either way, SECMAS will notify you with any corrective actions that have been found by your consultant or that you already submitted, and you will get that notification in August. Right. SECMAS will send the notification of findings by email, and you'll get a hyperlink to log on with your LEA PIN. The student corrective actions are due within 45 calendar days of that notification, and then policies and procedures is 60 days of that notification. We're at the home stretch, you guys. Prong 2 review, and this is where it starts getting very kind of funky. So prong 2 review is only for those districts that had any non-compliance in the first part of their review, in that initial review. If everything was compliant and your consultant found that everything was compliant in that initial review, you will not participate in prong 2. If even one item was found non-compliant for one student, you will enter into this prong 2 review. Federal regulations require LEAs must demonstrate 100% compliance in the areas of original non-compliance. So this part of the review is with 5 students per indicator. This process will continue until 100% compliance is found. It must be completed within 1 year of the first review. If you have questions about that, throw them in the chat, because I know this part starts getting funky. SECMAS will notify the LEAs by email if they're in a prong 2 review. And your CDE consultant will send you a list as well. Oh, my dog's not going to start. And the CDE consultant will do the prong 2 review instead of the district staff. It's a little different than the first go around. If a prong 2 number 1 results in non-compliance, the LEA must complete the corrective actions to fix those files from those first 5 set of students. And then we'll do a prong 2 number 2 review. LEAs will have 30 calendar days to complete any prong 2 corrective actions. The policies, procedures, and practices review is complete when an LEA is found 100% compliant. This may be during the initial review, like I explained. If nothing was found non-compliant in that very first review before prong 2, you won't get into a prong 2 review. So you could be done with your review process then. If you are in a prong 2 process and those first 5 students are pulled and the consultant does the review and everything is compliant, you could be done then. If any non-compliance is found, we'll have to pull 5 more students. If any non-compliance is found, we'll have to pull 5 more students. So hopefully you want to, not keep going down. I feel like districts usually start looking ahead to make sure if there are errors that are repetitive, they fix those errors before we get into looking into more and more files. All right, the LEA Special Education Director, Superintendent, and SELPA will be notified by SECMAS. Email a review process closure, and that's when you folks will know that you are all done with the review. Let's see any questions on the chat. And that is a wrap. I will hand it back to Olivia.
Thank you, Nicole. Ryan, you're going to share the screen. Awesome. Thank you. So now we're going to talk about what's next. And don't worry, we do have a section for question and answer at the end of this presentation. So in your slide deck, in the Google participant folder, you have copies of the CDE PowerPoint, the R PowerPoint as well. This is a kind of summary of the important dates. So right now, we're currently March through June. We're in the step 1, gather and inquire. You've been attending trainings and completing some homework. We're going to be sending out feedback and regarding the different activities we've asked you to complete. On June 30th, this entire process that Nicole, Stephen, and Libby have talked about is due. So you're going to be submitting this through the SECMAS disproportionality review submission, June 30th. If you have questions prior to that, please do not wait to the last minute. Reach out to your FMTA region consultants, and you can also reach out to us as well, and we can put you in contact with them. July through September, you're going to start step 2, investigate training and activities. That's going to include your root cause analysis, which is why all these trainings are so important. In August, you will be notified by CDE about corrective actions if you have any, and there will be some feedback sessions for LEA, specifically in collaboration with CDE and ED&D. In October, you start the session that's called plan. We don't at this point in time have a template for the SIM plan. If we are provided with one, we will definitely make that available to LEAs. In October, the student level data corrective actions are due, and policy and procedure corrective actions are due. And then November 1st, your compliance and improvement monitoring plan will be due. Next slide, Ryan. So if you have missed any of our training sessions and you need to make them up, they are listed on this slide. You can click on register and it'll take you right to our website. Tomorrow we have CDE who will be providing the educational benefit. It is an optional training. However, once again, it is very important and will most than likely help you with your root cause analysis. Also, we're going to be going infrastructure assessment in May as well. And then we have a Q&A with the policies, practices, and procedures with CDE on May 10th. So if you have anybody in your district or LEA who has not attended any session, please encourage them to attend makeup sessions just to build awareness and support. So schedule a coaching session. Many of you say, you know, this is really overwhelming. I'm a little bit confused. We totally get it. If you want to reach out to us, you can contact us through Adrian Bautista, our program clerk. On a couple slides down, I'm going to show you the emails for all the FMTAs by region. Please don't hesitate to contact and reach out to them. We are here to support you and to work together to make sure that this is a successful process for each LEA. So we're gonna, as we get close to our ending here, we want to share this quote. We cannot change what we are not aware of. And once we are aware, we cannot help but change. Our team selected this quote because we really think it's important as you go through the student file review, the policy procedures review, you know, keep an open mind. We understand it's time consuming and, you know, it could be overwhelming, especially in the middle of you're trying to teach kids, you know, support parents, do everything else that's going on at the end of the year. But we need to have an open mind. So as we discover any practices, procedures, policies that we have in our systems that need to be changed, first, we need to discover, right, what the issue is. And then once we're made aware of it, then we can work together to create that change to better serve our students and families. We want to acknowledge the California Department of Education, which does fund our ED&D project. We're grateful to CDE and the California Collaborative for Educational Excellence for their partnership through this technical assistance process. So in the next couple slides, our appendix, we have contact information for all our teams. First of all, we have find your region, and Erin, if you could drop the link if you haven't already for the website. This is a picture of it, but if you go onto the website, it's easier to read. Find your region so you can figure out who your FMTA is if you haven't met them already. And on the next 2 pages, we have their names and emails listed by region. Next page, right? Thank you. Region 1 through 9 here, and then 10 and 11 on the next page with also the directors for Unit 2 and Unit 3. On the next page, we have the contacts for us. If you want a coaching session, once again, please reach out directly to Adrian Bautista to schedule that. And lastly, we are going to go to questions. So we are going to go ahead and stop sharing. We're going to put it on gallery view. If you have questions you'd like to have addressed, go ahead and raise your hand. At the bottom of the Zoom link, you should see a little icon that says reaction. If you click on the icon that says raise hand, it should allow you to do that. And then we'll call on you so that our FMTA team can answer some questions. Erin, I see your hand is up.
I just wanted to go back to a question that was earlier in the chat to make sure we addressed it. And it was a question about probably for our FMTA team, will SELPAs have access to the policies, practices, and procedures upload button?
So SELPA's role login does not have that, but they are CC'd on the LEA special ed director's email. So if the special ed director says, yeah, go ahead, use my login to upload policy and procedure documents, then that's totally something you could do.
See a thumbs up, so that was a good answer. Anybody? I'm looking, scanning to see if anybody has
There's
their hand
another
up.
question in the chat. Just to
Okay.
clarify, is Ed Benefit a required session or optional?
It is an optional session. However, we do highly encourage it, especially if this is your first time going through the Dispro, because it will help, for you to gather more information as you move into your root cause analysis in step 2.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Olivia, but our understanding from the CDE, our CDE partners, is that going through the Ed Benefit process is probably one of the most beneficial activities that you can do if you are new into disproportionality. Is that right, Libby?
Yes, I mean, we've always heard that they don't, like, at first it's like, oh man, I have to do this whole process because it's pretty extensive. It can take like half a day to a day just to get through like 1 or 2 files. But we always hear back like, hey, there was so much I learned from this. It was so beneficial. So we definitely think it's something that the LEAs will find a good resource and way to look at your files.
I see a question in the chat says to clarify, the documents we're completing as activities, parent input, data drill down, etc., are not actually submitted. The only thing submitted is on June 30th in the electronic reviews. That is not correct. There are due dates. We can resend out sim plan due dates, or if we have the link, we can put that in the chat now. There are due dates for those activities. Our team, we apologize for the delay, but we are working hard to get all the feedback out, and the part 2 for the data drill down should go out by the end of the day today. Libby, Nicole, or Stephen, thank you so much for presenting today. Do you have any additional questions, information you want to add? Or does anybody else have questions? Erin, I see you.
Yeah, Libby, do you want to explain the documents that we added this morning to that participant folder so that folks know?
Yeah, definitely. So in yesterday's session, we had a couple people asking for hard copies of the protocol items and questions that you can find in SECMIS. So those documents are now added to that area. So you can download them and use them if you like to do like a hard copy version and not work just online. You can print those out and it has each of the questions that are reflected in SECMIS.
But just to clarify, those hard copies are not submitted. They still have to submit everything electronically.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. It's just for people who like to do things with the hard copy with the file in front of them or something like that.
I found that my folks find it easier to do it that way because once they put it all out, copy is straight data entry into the system. So just in case that helps.
I did want to mention to the person who was talking about the due dates, 6:30 is correct for the SECMIS submission. So at least that due date is June 30th, just to kind of reiterate that.
As far as the link to all the folders, some of these sessions are mandatory, so we can release it after attendance has been taken for all the sessions. Otherwise, we've been releasing the link to all of them. They're all kind of hooked up. So if you have any questions about your attendance, feel free to email our program clerk, Adrian Bautista, to ensure attendance, and then we can get those things out to you.
It looks like there was a question if there's going to be additional sessions offered for ed benefit besides 428.
At this point in time, nothing additional has been scheduled, so we would have to check with the administrator for FMTA Unit 2 to see if she would have additional availability, her and her team, to do that.
And Kristen, you have your hand up.
Yeah, this is more of, I think, a question for the ED&D team. So I had to mute my audio for a few minutes. I apologize. I'm just looking at the step 1 sheet that Erin had just shared, where it says required activity number 1, required activity number 2. Is that related to like session 1, session 2, or is there a follow-up activity for that? I'm sorry, you probably went over this already.
Anybody else from the team? I'll answer that. That's a great question. So part 1 is that participant guide. If you attended data drill down, for instance, you should have received that activity guide where we asked you to PDF and send it into our program clerk. That is part 1. And then, as Olivia just shared, today we are sending feedback to that with a part 2 follow-up activity. And that is for all of the required sessions that we're doing that. That way we can make sure that any feedback we need to provide to set you up for success for the larger part 2 will be there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, Benay.
Okay, so the SELPA didn't do the activities. So I just want you to know that like we helped our LEAs do them and we worked on that, but we didn't actually do the activity and submit it. So was it required to do the activity in order to get to like the recording and things like that? Because I don't have any of the recordings. So.
No, but I thank you. We apologize for the confusion. So that we just need to make sure the attendance is for the actually LEA units, because we turn that over to CDE, but absolutely we can release information to the SELPA directors because we know you're supporting your districts. Any other questions? Okay, I don't see any other questions. Once again, a big shout out to our CDE FMTA Unit 3. Thank you for presenting today. Our CDE FMTA Unit 2, who are going to be presenting tomorrow. We appreciate all of your attendance and collaboration. I'm going to go ahead and end the session for today, but please feel free to reach out to us for a coaching session with the FMTA team and or a coaching session with the ED&D team. Okay. Thank you so much.